All right, welcome. We are talking today about tasks, organization, keeping your mind clutter free. So, this is part of our Hey Girl You Can networking event. So, thank you guys for being here. So, we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to teach you the system that I have started to use within the last year to keep myself organized. So, particularly running multiple businesses, having lots going on. And I think we can all agree, right? Like our brains just get cluttered. So, I've combined a little bit about what I used to do, and I've added some new elements in it that have just streamlined and worked a lot better for me. And hopefully, they will serve you. So, one is, and this is something I've always done, I learned years, probably close to 3 decades ago from mentors of mine to use a single subject notebook every single month. I know it seems so basic. I go to the dollar store, I get a really cute one that I want to open. I like how it makes me feel. There's an energy about, hey, I have a new notebook. The reason the benefit of using a new one every single month is it starts you out fresh. Your brain is like, oh, I don't have all the clutter from the month before. It feels like a New Year's every month. And it's kind of that fresh start. And you just dump all of the things that are in your brain that you have to do onto this list. Now, this is both business, this is both personal. This is all of the maybe a household task that you want to get to. It's all the stuff that takes up the space in your brain that creates clutter, that creates overwhelm, that it makes us feel like, oh my gosh, I have a million things to do. Do you ever have that feeling I have a million things to do? When you actually start to write it down, there's probably not a million on your list, but you dump it all out. And the reason you dump it out is so that you can free up your brain. You can free up that mental clutter. So that is the first step, kind of the dump list. And then what I use is I use Taskboard. Now, this is not Google Tasks that's in the Google Calendar. That is something different. This you can download the app or you can use it on your phone. I will show you the app. It's that one here on the bottom with the check mark. It's like a white app with a circle and a blue circle check on it. But what it does is it creates a board, and I have the free version. There is a premium one. I use the free one, so you can too. It creates a board where you have tasks lists and they are lined up horizontally. All right. And on the app, you can swipe through them. Visually, this is a really great system for me because I can log into my computer and I can see my task lists. But here's the key that I do a little bit differently now that's working really well for me. It's how I'm labeling these lists. So the first one I label, of course, is the dump list. Now, why would I not do the dump list just on the computer or on the app? It's because there is something that happens differently when you go from a pen to a piece of paper in your brain. There's a different connection that happens. And I think as even though we're very digital, we want to use that writing stuff down. You will remember, you will connect more. There's a different connection that happens, a different wiring that's firing off. So I still start with a written dump list. Then I take that list and I transfer that into my dump list that's in my task board. And it's just called dump list. Now, this is a running list. So anytime I'm out, anytime I think of something, oh gosh, I got to get this done, rather than it sitting in the back of my mind, taking up space, going, Tara, don't forget to do that, I dump it on my list. Okay, so that's the benefit is that you're dumping it onto your list. Goal is that you don't want to have to constantly remember all of this stuff. This is what is exhausting us, all of the things that we need to keep track of and remember. So as soon as you're out, you have your phone with you dump it into your dump list, and you don't need to remember it anymore. Then what you're doing is you're moving things off of your dump lists into your other lists. And this is how I have them labeled because, years ago, I was kind of taught, well, you label them based on, priority, most important, least important, delegation, not important, somebody else can do. I color code and I still love a good color coding time blocking sheet. What's kind of, this is what you need to do. And a lot of it was based on priority of importance. This still does that, but it sets it up a little bit differently in my brain. So my first list is my this is my this week. So I start with what is the stuff that's on my dump list that has to get done this week. There's a time limit, there's a time frame, like it's just got to get done this week, right? And so that's the first thing I'm going to move. I'm going to move everything off the dump list that is must imperative this week. Then I go, okay, what are the things that need to get done this month? They don't need to get done this week, but they've got to get done this month. Those move into a category called, you guessed it, this month. All right. Then I work on a quarterly. So just the way I schedule my life, the way I schedule my calendar is in blocks, 3 months at a time. So I do January through March, April through June. That works for my businesses. That works in my life. I will say that I used to do 6 months at a time, post pandemic, where things are changing so fast and moving so fast. I found that that's not really as effective. And so I've moved into a quarterly versus a biannually system. So you could do however you work. Maybe you do an every other month system, or maybe you do every 6 months, but it's kind of it's not far away, but it's within the next season. So you might call this, I call mine, within the quarter. You could call this your soon category. It doesn't happen this month, but it has to happen soon. It could also be a soon category, whatever word works for you. But it's kind of that concept. It's within the next year, it's coming up, but it's not necessarily this month. All right. So I have my this week, this month, this quarter, or your soon category happening soon. Or you could call it your coming up category. Then and then you have your dump list, right? Then I have what's called a someday category. These are things that I want to get to someday, but today is not the day. These could be long-term goals, long-term dreams. Like I have a blog that I want to do. Someday I want to get to it, but it's not happening this month, this quarter. It's not on my like immediate to-do list. It's something that I don't want to forget about. Someday I'd like to do that. It could be maybe a house project that someday you want to get to. One of those things. So it's kind of like this, it's in the back of my head. It's something I want to do, but it's not really something that's on a priority list. I just don't want to forget about it. Because what happens is we keep it in the back of our mind. And that's what's building up this mental exhaustion. I don't want to keep it in the back of my mind. I want to put it on my someday list. And maybe I'll get to it and maybe I won't. Someday, maybe I will. Okay. Now, I have two other lists that I use. So, what I do is I go to my this week list. And from there, I create my to-day list. This is going to be your shortest list. This is just the things that you need to get done today. If you have more than 6 things on this list, it's probably too much because there's really only so much that we can get done in a day. These are the 6 things, that they're really important that have to get done today. You can always go back to your this week list, but this is like absolutely has to get done today stuff. If you get through those things and it's only 1 o'clock and you have more time, then you can go back to your this week list and say, okay, what else can I tackle on this list to get done today? But I want to know what are the most important things. If you've ever heard that concept of the 6 most important list, this is kind of where you're working with that. What are the things that have to get done? They are my priority for today. So now I have my list. I have my today, which only has about 6 things on it. This week, these are the things that have to get done this week. I may be working on that list today, depending on if I get through everything. This month, this quarter, I still have my master dump list that everything's coming off of, and then my someday list. Then I have one more list, and it's my called to listen to list. Now, how many of you guys, we have a list of things that we want to listen to? You got an email and there was a great podcast in there that you wanted to listen to. You saw a great YouTube video that you were like, oh, that looks good. I should watch that. Maybe you guys know I'm big on bundles. I love bundles because you get access to all these great resources. And so maybe there was a great resource or a class that you grabbed and you're like, oh, I want to listen to that. Or a summit that you purchased and there were some audios in there that you wanted to listen to or some videos. Many of us, at least in my world, I'm not going to just sit down and be like, let me start, watching all these podcasts or listening to these podcasts or watching all these videos. So I put it on my to listen to list. The reason why is I maximize my drive time. Anytime in my car, I am going to my to listen to list and I am listening to what's on that list. I can pull up and I have it listed. It might say like podcast and it will tell me what the podcast is about with the link to listen to the podcast. Or it might say YouTube video with what the YouTube video is about with the link to listen to that video or summit or whatever it is that I want to listen to. It's usually educational, informational, or inspirational. And so I have my list. I can literally just take my car, connect it to my Bluetooth, go into my task list, click on it to listen, and bam, now I'm utilizing my drive time, listening to something that's on my list that I wanted to make sure I learned about, but I didn't necessarily have time to sit down and just watch it. So this has been huge because it helps me keep track of, oh, I don't want to forget to listen to that really great whatever it was, but where do I put it? Where do I keep it? Is it in my email? Is it taking up clutter someplace else? Now it's just on its own list. And as I listen, I can check off. The other thing I really love is that when you check things off of task.org and you click on it, it puts a line through it. It's like that instant dopamine hit, like, oh my gosh, I got that done. So here's the thing. This is just the system that works for me. One of the things that we talk a lot about in Hey Girl You Can, and we dive deep into this in the Total Transformation Day, is that each of us is wired uniquely. We all have different strengths. We all have different ways that we see the world. We all have different abilities. We also have different tolerance levels and different energy levels and different lifestyles. Some of us have different cultures, right? And so what works for me may or may not work for you. It's not about being a cookie cutter. It's about really knowing how you're wired and what works for you. Now, when you don't know, when you're like, I don't have a system that works for you, this is where you try on different things and you say, well, this works for me and this doesn't work for me. And I like how this works. And then you can craft and create something that's very specific for you. So, what I want to do is I want to share with you this is what works for me. Maybe it will work for you, or maybe one of these tips, maybe just the idea of a to listen to list. You go, oh, that would be good for me. Maybe it's not all of it. If you have a system that you are rocking, that you feel like I always feel organized, I feel on top of things, I don't feel mentally exhausted, great. You don't need any of this. If you're like, yeah, no, I do feel like constantly my mind is going and I'm always thinking of the things I need to keep track of. And I'm disorganized and I've got things in my email and things written down and post-it notes on my desk, then maybe some of these might work. And you try something and you try it for about 90 days and then you evaluate and say, do I like this? Does this work for me? These are the types of things that it's really about getting to know you and hearing from other people what works for them so you can figure out what works for you. All right. You are uniquely wired. You are going to do things different than anybody else because there is no other you on the planet. So you just take tips and then you start to craft a life that supports you. Now, if you are looking for community to get part of and you're like, I'm looking for a place where I can network and I can get support and I can really step in and grow myself so I could grow my business or step into the best version of myself, this is where the Hey Girl You Can community is going to come in. This is your tribe. This is your village. This is where you come together. You get events every single month. You get a resource of libraries full of all different kinds of workbooks and journals and all of this type of stuff. All right. If you're like, I need a big shift, I need a massive, like immersive, I am ready to transform my life. I am ready to step into the best version of myself. I need to get rid of my limiting beliefs. I need to figure out what my priorities are, my core values. Like I just want a 1 day immersive. That's the Total Transformation Day. It only happens 6 times a year. The spaces are limited. If you are unsure, I always tell people reach out to me. If you're unsure, let's talk about it. Let's talk about where you're at right now and what you need and if you would be a good fit. But hopefully some of these tips help you. We're going to move on to our networking. So thanks for watching.